Welcome back to Candy's Classic Game Shrine, everyone. Today I want to discuss mental health, neurodiversity, and video games. I am neurodivergent and suffer from several mental health disorders, and video games have been a key part of my mental well-being. My current diagnoses are general anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, ADHD inattentive type, autism level 1, and chronic post-traumatic stress disorder. General anxiety disorder is basically being in a constant state of worry all the time, whether it's about your finances, your looks, the state of the world, or kind of anything in between. It's a very common disorder and is easily treated with therapy, medications, or a combination of the two. I used to just do medication for my anxiety disorder. However, I then added therapy to the treatment, and now I only need therapy in order to manage it. However, if you do need medication to manage it, there's no shame in that. You wouldn't shame a diabetic for taking insulin to make up for what their pancreas can't create. So no one should be shaming anyone for taking a medication to make up for a deficit of chemicals that their brain needs to function. Major depressive disorder is when a person has a persistently depressed mood or decreased interest in pleasurable activities, feelings of guilt or worthlessness, lack of energy, poor concentration, either eating too much or too little, or suicidal thoughts or actions. I've had both anxiety and depression since I was about 7, maybe even younger, but I just never knew what it was, nor did I get any treatment until I was in my 20s. Admittedly, depression is becoming, or my depression particularly, is becoming treatment resistant, but I'll be starting a new treatment with a medication called Spravato, which seems pretty promising. ADHD is something that I only recently learned that I had. I'm talking like only a couple of months ago, and I'm in my mid-30s now. ADHD has 3 types. You have the stereotypical hyperactive, you have inattentive, and then you have combined, which is the 2 of them. The inattentive type tends to make you more forgetful, distracted more easily, and space out a little bit more. I'm on medications now to treat my ADHD, and it's improved my quality of life greatly. I'm much more able to focus on tasks and not get as sidetracked. Level 1 autism, which was formerly known as Asperger's syndrome, is what I recently found out that I had. When I went for my ADHD testing, I requested the autism be tested as well, because the more I learned about the 2 of them, the more I feel like I fit the bill for both. Basically, folks with level 1 autism tend to not appear different than neurotypical people, and this is usually due to us almost always masking, but we're almost always exhausted from it. We don't do well with back and forth conversation, especially small talk, and we tend to have social anxiety. There's exceptions to this, but generally. If I had gotten my ADHD and autism diagnosis or help for these conditions before I hit 13, there's a good chance my anxiety and depression may not have been as bad as it is as an adult. Science has shown that people that go longer without these diagnoses will be at a higher risk of suffering from both depression and anxiety later in life. So this next bit, I want to give you all some time to potentially scroll ahead. I will put a timestamp in the video. I will be talking about some potentially triggering things. So I'm going to pause and give you some time to skip ahead. Now, chronic PTSD is not to be confused with complex PTSD. Complex PTSD is the result of prolonged trauma, like but not limited to child abuse, domestic violence, or even war. PTSD that isn't categorized as complex can be acute or chronic. Acute basically describes a traumatic event or the symptoms that appear after a traumatic event that resolve after a specific amount of time, whereas chronic PTSD refers to the symptoms that persist for a month or more, usually lifelong. I have experienced several life-changing traumatic events in my life, but the majority of them were not over a prolonged period of time. What I experienced through childhood trauma was prolonged. However, I was able to escape it when I spent time with my dad and his side of the family. Having a positive influence uh, and an escape for me is what helped prevent it from becoming complex PTSD later in my life. Um, my other traumas are medical traumas from invasive or wrongly performed procedures and constantly being sick when I was a kid. Um, and unfortunately, I am also a victim of sexual assault, and most of this has happened before I hit the age of 20. So I've gone through quite a bit. How I use video games for my mental health. So, for as long as I've been playing video games, I've always used it as a means to make me happy. My first memory of video games is me watching my dad play NES when he got back from work. Those moments cemented that connection in my brain that video games equal happiness to me. And as the years went by and life became more difficult for me, I found myself losing myself in video games to feel that escape and happiness again. Pokemon was a huge comfort to me as a kid. It helped me feel that companionship because I was an outcast and I didn't have many friends. Basically, I was able to find what I felt I was missing through those games. When I'm overwhelmed, I use life simulators like Animal Crossing or Stardew Valley to take the edge off life. You can't really do wrong in those worlds, and it allows me to just casually do things that I normally can't do. Like, as a millennial, you can't really own a house. So I'll almost always have my Nintendo Switch or my 3DS on me when I'm in public. Not when I'm grocery shopping or anything, but just in case I ever feel overwhelmed in a social situation, it allows me to escape and kind of ground myself. As the PTSD from one of my later traumas took place, I found myself playing a lot more puzzle games like word searches, crosswords, Tetris, and others like that. I found them to be easy and great distraction once intrusive thoughts or these vicious thought cycles and flashbacks would occur. My mind would still be able to process the trauma, but it wasn't being allowed to stay in the forefront of my mind. I was too focused on the game and trying to do well, but this will all be a little bit more relevant later on. While going for my ADHD testing, there was even some aspects of games, granted they were flash type games, to learn if a person has ADHD or not. It seems as though games are not only a nice escape, but they're becoming very useful diagnostic and even treatment tools in different aspects of mental health and neurodiversity. So, why do we play video games? There's really no one right answer, as it's different for each person and for each genre of game that they play. Some questions that you may want to ask yourself as you're playing your next game to maybe give it a deeper thought would be, am I trying to find a way to live life as a person I wish I could be, but I feel is only attainable through a video game? Or am I playing this game to test out a potential social interaction I may face in the future? Some of us with social anxiety are always practicing potential, phrases and situation we face. Video games may be another option. Am I playing this game to live out a life that I cannot have, or perhaps even a life I do not want? Perhaps you want to see what it might like to be a criminal without actually being a criminal. Am I playing this video game to allow myself a place to vent violent or aggressive emotions safely without harming anyone or myself. Again, going back into playing a game like GTA to pretend you're a criminal. I would hope you don't want to be a criminal, but it allows you a safe place to imagine what it would be like to be one. Am I playing this game to escape from the harshness of reality? We all know life is difficult for everyone. I don't care who you are, how wealthy you are, we all have struggles, and we all want an escape. Video games could potentially be that escape for us. So those are some questions to ask yourself next time you start up your next gaming session. Maybe give yourself a bit of a deeper dive into why you're doing this, what drives you, what motivates you. And to that, I ask, what do we get out of video games? Despite all the negative things we've been told throughout our lives, about video games rotting your brain and not being any good for you, there's actually some good benefits to be had from playing them. As I briefly mentioned before, it gives us an escape from the harsh realities of life. Many people turn to movies or other forms of media, but video games are a valid option as a means to decompress after a long day. Through multiplayer games, it teaches us team building and working together to achieve a goal, and it contributes to socialization, despite what our parents always told us about being in our rooms or our basements playing video games. Many genres of games make you exercise your brain through problem and puzzle solving, whether you're playing Brain Age or Tetris or Portal or Battlefield even. This in turn helps you build more logic and a stronger and healthier brain. When playing more story-driven games, you learn emotional empathy when interacting with other characters or playing as the main character in a quest to do a noble deed. This can then translate later into real-life experiences. Another benefit of video games is that they help you develop coordination skills, for example, like in FPS games. You can go a step further and even gain real-world skills and knowledge in a particular area like racing or even flying through the use of simulation games, and even more so if you have simulation setups to play those games. It's very helpful for pilots. Again, with another piece of anecdotal evidence, my brother-in-law is very interested in being a pilot and constantly plays Microsoft Flight Sim, and it actually helped him when he did his discovery flight with a flight instructor, who then said he was impressed and that he did better than most of his adult students. Probably one of the most profound aspects of gaming is its direct relation to trauma. In recent years, they've studied the effect of Tetris and later on different word games on those suffering with PTSD. Playing Tetris or word games at the onset of traumatic experience and symptoms reduces the severity and recurrence of these symptoms in those with PTSD, whether complex or chronic. Now, I never knew this when I was suffering at the height of my PTSD, but I just naturally felt gravitated to Tetris and word games. And while my experience is anecdotal, I can say those games helped me through those times and at times literally saved my life. And I can't thank those developers enough for creating those games because, wow. But I would say the biggest benefit of all with gaming would be the friendship building. I've made some of my deepest connections with people that shared my passion and love for gaming. These weren't just folks that I met in school that I invited over and played couch co-op with me. These were people that I just happened to meet randomly that I saw with a Mario keychain, or a person that I traded Pokemon with across the globe that I now just consider a really good, true friend. And it's something that, again, we grew up hearing that we can't make friends or be social with video games, but here it proves the opposite. Now, continuing that train of thought with being social and everything, um, talking about conventions and video game gatherings. The gaming community has a lot of people in it that suffer from mental illness or that are neurodivergent in some way. And despite all of this and the struggles that we face as people with mental illness and neurodiversity struggles, um, we still find a way to gather and have a good time at these conventions. I feel that it's because we either consciously or subconsciously recognize that we are amongst like-minded people that who will just accept them for being the weirdos, the lovable nerds that they are, and just not think twice. Um, of course, there's always exceptions to those rules, but overall, the vibe at conventions that I've been to across the country have always been welcoming for all. One thing that PRGE, the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, did last year was work with a cat rescue that had tents with kittens in it to play with and adopt. You paid a few bucks to enter the tent by yourself or with a friend, and you got 10 minutes to decompress and just play with kittens, and nobody bothered you. I think ideas like this are great for folks that get overstimulated, whether they're neurodivergent, mentally, or suffering from mental illness or not. And I think it's fantastic. I think more places should do it. And even quiet rooms, if they don't want to work with like animal rescues, would be fantastic for us to just chill out and decompress before we jump back into the chaos. So, why do we collect video games? I know this is a thing about video games and gaming, but a lot of us gamers also collect games and video game consoles. Why is that? I feel like a lot of it, or rather, I feel like it could be one or more of these following factors that drive us to collect, or potentially none. And I would love to hear your thoughts and your reasons for collecting and gaming. I feel for some of us, part of it is wanting to relive childhood or finally being able to buy things that we wanted as children that we never got or couldn't afford. For some of us collectors, maybe we do this because we look at it as art that is to be displayed and admired. And when you look at it, it brings you a sense of peace and gives you a chance to decompress. For others, maybe it's a way to fill a void and cope with life or mental struggles. It can deliver that dopamine that they miss out on a day-to-day basis, and every time they get a new addition to their collection or they find a rarity. For some people, sharing the games that they collect with friends or future generations is perhaps a reason that they do it. I've heard this reason expressed often. I've heard it brings, from many people, I've heard it brings them joy to share their passion with people close to them and maybe get them interested in the same things as them, or even deepen an already existing appreciation that they shared. Another reason for folks to collect would be, now this might not be a popular reason, or even a good reason, but perhaps it's for recognition or wanting to fit in with others that share a similar passion. A lot of people want to feel a sense of belonging and praise, no matter where you are. And there may be numerous factors as to why that is. But given the presence of online gamers and collectors, it may entice people more to get heavily into collecting so that they may be seen and recognized and maybe admired where they weren't being recognized, seen, or admired outside of that bubble. There's even clinical reasons for collecting. Someone could potentially be neurodivergent. People with OCD, autism, ADHD, several other conditions under that umbrella will cause folks to develop a hyperfixation or an obsession, and video games might just be that obsession. And there might be a deeper core reason as to why video games became that obsession, but clinically, it could be that it became that obsession because of their neurodiversity. I hope that makes sense. As for myself, I collect for several reasons. I collect to relive my childhood. I collect to share with others. I don't want children. I'm never going to have children, but I enjoy sharing it with my friends' children or my brother-in-law who is 14. And it just seems to be a nice way to keep old traditions going, fun and harmless traditions going, and making them realize how far video games have come from where they once were, where their parents and even grandparents started with gaming. So this next part of the video is not mental health related. There's a strong correlation with neurodiversity with this though, and I want to see how this potentially relates to video games. So it was only a few years ago that I learned about the term seeing through the mind's eye, and that not everybody has this ability. So the ability to see through your mind's eye for most people is normal. When they tell you to imagine something, okay, you can imagine, I'll tell you to imagine a video game controller. So can you tell me what video game controller, what console that video game controller is for? Is it a crisp, vivid picture in your mind of this video game controller? Can you even feel how heavy the controller is or how spongy the buttons are? Can you describe if it's on a surface, if it's in a room, things like that? Some people have a varying degree to which they can potentially see this image. For me, if you ask me this question, let me close my eyes for a moment. I'm imagining a video game controller. I see a white Xbox 360 controller with the cord tightly wound underneath it on a black wooden shelf in a naturally lit room. And I can feel that it has the battery pack on the back of it. And I can describe in vivid detail what this would feel like to me. And for a lot of people, they can't. A lot of people will be like, yeah, I can imagine a 360 controller, but I can't tell you what color it is. I can't tell you what it feels like. I can't tell you anything around it. And that's usually what most folks experience. And then you have the other extreme opposite, where people see nothing. My husband is like this. I've tried this example on him, and he literally sees black when I tell him to imagine things. He just hears words or sounds, his brain processes it, but there's no imagery that goes along with it. So this is called aphantasia, the inability to see through the mind's eye, whereas what I experience is hyperphantasia, which is the ability to see extremely vividly through the mind's eye. You can even go a step further, particularly I can. I know other people can too. My sister is a similar way, where you can not even have to close your eyes to imagine things with such vivid detail. I can actually, if I concentrate, if there's not enough stimuli around me, I can actually overlay that Xbox 360 controller in front of me as I'm looking into the camera, talking to all of you, and seeing that while seeing everything in front of me as I'm speaking to you. Let me make this clear. I'm able to differentiate what is in my mind and what is reality. Absolutely no question there. It's very different from a hallucination. So let me make that clear. With all of that said, I've never found myself to be needing much in terms of crazy graphics in video games. I don't need high fidelity HD, ultra 8K, 7 million K, whatever TV and like the best graphics. Like, give me an Atari 2600 and a TV with some rabbit ears, and I will be imagining the most vivid gameplay in my life. Like what you saw on the cover and cartridge art of an Atari 2600 would be what I would be seeing as I played just with those blocks on the screen. So I wonder if my ability to see things so vividly plays into part as to why I don't need these high fidelity graphics or any upscaling or things like that. And I wonder if any of you gamers at either end of the scale, do you need high fidelity graphics and things because you are unable to see and imagine things? Or do you just like them because you are able to imagine things so vividly and you want to take the most of that? I'm really curious about what makes everybody tick in regarding to that. I feel like that is a very interesting and perhaps not thought about aspect of gaming. So hopefully that, settles in your mind a bit and makes you think. So closing out this video, I want to say a few things. First, a lot of the resources that I use to research this topic of the video more in depth will be included in the description. Unfortunately, things like talking to my psychiatrist and my therapist and getting their perspective from a medical standpoint and a professional standpoint on video games and mental health, I can't include because of HIPAA and things of that nature. But I hope what I've talked about leads you to research more with your providers and PubMed, Google Scholar, and other reputable studies. I've also included a link to a website called Attitude. They focus in ADHD, ADD as it was once called, and they have a diagnostic test there for neurodiversity, not just ADHD, and it is extremely accurate and very reputable. I took it before my professional diagnosis, and I brought it with me to my diagnosis, and the professionals that were administering the test found it very helpful, and it was pretty much spot on to what the professional diagnoses found as well. Takes a few minutes of your time. It's all private information. They send you a breakdown of what everything is and sources on it. So I highly recommend it if you're curious. And if you have children that you're curious about, potentially get them checked out sooner rather than later. I promise you, your kids are going to thank you for it in the long run. You'll be an even better parent than you are. I promise. It's not a damaged good that you're dealing with. You're helping build an even awesome future, younger, little you. Now, with that said, some more important things I would like to stress to everybody watching. I would like to say that you are valid. Your sexual orientation is valid. Your struggles are valid. Your gender identity is valid. Your feelings and emotions are valid. And don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Do no harm, take no shit. It's okay to seek help, and it's okay to take medications if you're prescribed them. Stay strong, be kind to others, and game on. I love you all.